Hello, good morning. This is Dr. Iftikhar Ahmed Ansari, Department of Political Science, Aligarh Muslim University, AMU, Aligarh. Now, today I'm going to talk about the concept of liberty. The concept of liberty, along with its nature, its definition, its scope, then different dimensions, and what are the safeguards for liberty that one should adopt in their country to make it a reality for the individuals or the citizens of the country. So the term liberty, it has been taken from the Latin word liber, which means free. It has been identified in various ways the central theme of liberty, and it is opportunity to do what everyone or what someone likes. However, it's beyond the realm of imagination to expect to have such a freedom while living in a public arena. So man is a social creature, and he is living in the public eye. He must therefore change his freedom with due in regard to the freedom of others. So guideline of freedom direct or guideline of human direct and conduct is basic in public activity. The principal adage of freedom is that law is the state of freedom. So freedom is eulogized by liberal idealist as well as Marxist ideology. Nobody quarrels with freedom as an end. But different schools of thought differ on the means and modes of realizing freedom. Even the champions of absolutism, authoritarianism, and slavery pay lip service to freedom, claiming that for ordinary men, submission to authority, regarded as the symbol of some sort of excellence, is the best way to realize freedom. The champions of liberty have, however, always challenged the claim of the privileged classes to such excellence. The ideal of liberty has inspired many revolutionary struggles against despotism and foreign regimes. It is significant that the struggle for liberty is always informed by a philosophy of equality. That is, when some oppressed sections arise against their oppressors, as in peasant revolt or national struggle of independence, they challenge the allegedly superiority of their oppressors, demanding equality and justice on the universal principle of human equality. So, talking about the concept of liberty, if you are at liberty to learn any foreign language, for example, to begin with, it means that there is no hindrance to your decision. Nobody physically stopped you from learning it. Second, the existence of condition of learning foreign language, for example, are available and accessible. So you would have to have access to a place or a website running a course in learning foreign language. So a person who is willing to teach this foreign language, or your accessibility to the website with computer and other facilities, etc., needs to be guaranteed. And third, and in a certain sense, this precedes the first two. You should have a choice. You have a choice to learn one of these languages. So the concept of liberty carries three connotations. First is the notion of choice. Here, in this case, the choice is to learn a foreign language. Then absence of constraints to make or achieve that what you have decided, that what you have chosen, and exercise such a choice, and existence of those conditions which enable you to actuate that choice. So what is liberty? What are those limitations which end the liberty? Does liberty do what it desires without any prohibition? There are no universal answers to such questions. Now, there is no doubt that on social level, liberty is impossible without any limitation. So, in spite of being unanimous on the definition of liberty, there had been strong differences regarding its limitations. And it has rightly been claimed that freedom is such a concept whose nature has always remained very conflicting among the people. Now, if you try to understand liberty according to the definition, then as per Thomas Hobbes, by liberty we mean absence of external obstacles. Now, those obstacles which minimize the working capacity of an individual. Further, if we see according to Rousseau, liberty is in following the public wish. And according to Hegel, liberty means to follow the laws of the state. And according to John Stuart Mill, liberty is an opportunity to find one's happiness till it does not obstruct the other's happiness. And according to Lasky, liberty is the deficiency of any kind of obstacle in social circumstances necessary for the happiness of the individual. And according to McPherson, liberty means liberty to work in the form of a complete human being. And a Marxist tradition, they saw liberty in two phases. They say freedom from those social institutions and institutions which compel individual to do or go against their wish, and secondly to establish such social circumstances in which man can live as per the necessities of his own humanity, human nature. So, talking about the nature of liberty, so we find liberty is the quality of man. It is the man as distinguished from other living beings who demand freedom and evolve institutions to secure that freedom. So, man has distinguished himself from other living beings as he claims to have an aim in life. Other creatures don't have that. So, he has created the whole complex of institutions, civilizations, and culture in pursuance of this aim. So long as the elders, the more experienced, more learned, and more competent, more prudent, and more energetic man in the society, they manage common affairs in common interest. So long as that has been done, men do not lose their freedom in obeying their commands, those learned and those competent, those prudent, those energetic men who are taking decisions on common affairs in common interest. But in actual practice, and it is mostly the selfish, strong, and the clever men who have managed to assume the dominant position and acquire a special privilege in society. As a result, society gets divided into privileged and underprivileged sections. The oppressor and oppressed, exploited and exploited, dominant and dependent. So, because one set of men assume power over the lives of the others, the privileged classes have developed a vested interest in the existing order. They have sought to justify that order by stressing their virtues in order to establish the legitimacy of their dominant position. Thus, the privileged classes have always stood in the defense of the status quo, no change in the previous position. It is only when the subject classes rise in revolt against injustice and oppression that they challenge the special privileges of the dominant class and raise the slogan of liberty to press their claim of equality. So, liberty is therefore a force behind a social change. So, it is the voice of the oppressed, it is the voice against injustice, it is a voice to reestablish human values as against the rules of the animal kingdom. So, if we look at the scope, we find the problem of liberty involves the adjustment of claims between the individual and the society or the community. Now, the state comes into picture because it is the instrument or agency for regulating their relations. Now, if the claim of the individual is stretched to an extreme in utter disregard of the interests of society, liberty is reduced to license. On the other hand, if liberty of the individual is increasingly restricted in the supposed interest of society, the result would be an unconditional submission to authority. Hence, the loss of liberty. It is therefore essential to draw a distinction between liberty and license on the one hand, and to fix the proper frontier between liberty and authority on the other. Now, when we talk about liberty as a license, it is interpreted as absence or removal of all restraints on the action of individuals in utter disregard of interest of other individuals. So, liberty degenerates into license. Now, such a condition is not compatible with the maintenance of social order, nor with the maintenance of liberty itself. In that case, one man's liberty would become another man's constraint or oppression. So, liberty of the strong would amount to the suppression of the weaker. The large fish will be free to swallow the smaller one, and there would be still larger fish to swallow the former. So, a thief's liberty to take away anybody's property would become a threat to everybody's security. So, a driver's freedom to drive at any speed, in any direction, at his own whim, would endanger the life and liberty of all users of the road. Now, such a situation is obviously self-contradictory. Now, if freedom is not to become a prerogative of a single individual or of, for that matter, a group of individuals, it must be regulated, and regulated in such a way that none shall use his freedom so as to destroy the freedom of others. As Hobhouse, in his Element of Social Justice in 1922, has pointed out, the uncharted freedom of one would be the conditional servitude of all but one. And conversely, a freedom to enjoy by all must impose some restraint upon all. So, Ernest Barker, in his Principle of Social and Political Theory, 1951, has sought to apply this principle in the wider socio-economic context. Now, the need of the liberty for each is necessarily qualified and conditioned by the need of liberty for all. So, the liberty of the owner of the capital to determine the condition of work in the factory which he owns is a relative liberty, which must be adjusted to the liberty of the worker who is going to work there and work under those conditions. Now, this leaves him still a free agent and gave him also a share in the determination of the conditions of work, because the liberty of each is thus relative to that of the other, and it has to be adjusted so that the other, it must always be regulated, and indeed it would not exist unless it were regulated. Now, liberty is meant to enable men to pursue rational objects or ideal objects. If they do so, each individual shall pursue his happiness in consonance with the happiness of the society. So, an individual's good will become an integral part of social good. Now, in such a perfect state, no regulation would be necessary. But since in real world we do not have that perfectness, individuals are not perfect, they are only capable of perfection. So the regulation of liberty becomes necessary to safeguard liberty itself. As Barker thus further observes, saying that liberty within the state is thus a relative and regulated liberty. It is the greatest common measure of liberty which is possible for all, as determined and defined first by the need of each to enjoy similar and equal liberty with others, and secondly, the need of all to enjoy specific liberty of realizing specific capacities. So, this view of relative and regulated liberty does not diminish or dilute liberty. On the contrary, it provides for a more substantive foundation thereof. As Barker has elucidated, a relative and regulated liberty, actually operative and enjoyed, is liberty greater in amount than absolute liberty could ever be. If indeed such liberty could ever exist, or ever amount of anything more than nothing at all. So, regulation of liberty implies the recognition of authority of the state over the individual. Now, if liberty of the individual cannot be permitted to be absolute, can we allow the authority of the state to become absolute? Thus, the conflict between the liberty and authority, no less grave than the conflict between the liberty and the license. In other words, if we deny absolute liberty to the individual, because no individual is perfect, we cannot accord absolute authority to the state, because no state on earth is perfect. So, in any case, limitations on the authority of the state have to be laid down to make authority more meaningful with reference to its social purpose. A state may possess unlimited legal power. For instance, the British Parliament is regarded as legally omnipotent. But in a real world, no state can afford to exercise unlimited powers. A state makes law, it has the power to enforce the law by coercion. State authority would be much more justified if it is backed by moral support and legitimacy instead of mere force or coercion. So, legitimacy denotes the support extended by the people to the state and its law out of their moral belief and values. Now, talking about dimensions, we find the liberty may formally be described as absence of restraint. Now, what type of activity of individual should remain unrestrained? If it is liberty is absence of restraint, then what should those unrestrained things are? So, unrestrained does not mean unregulated. It simply means implied that the activity in question should not be subjected to unreasonable restraints. So, in order to identify the proper sphere of such activities, we need to distinguish between different dimensions of liberty. Now, the very first liberty is natural liberty. When we talk about natural liberty, it's most it's commonly known with the endless and unrestricted freedom. So natural liberty is in step with what Hobbes said is that the absolute right of a man within the state of nature to all and everything together with proper to kill alternative man. Now with the social life and within the social life, no man enjoys natural liberty since he is subject to laws and rules named by the government and ethical pressure of the society. So the supporters of natural liberty hold that man is independent naturally, which its civilization that is chargeable for his bondage. So Rousseau was the chief supporter of the thought of natural liberty. Natural liberty existed in this state of nature. He says man lost natural liberty with emergence of the state or civil society. The next dimension is that of civil liberty. Civil liberty, according to Barker in Principles of Social and Political Theory, 1951, is the liberty of man in the capacity of an individual person, or his personal liberty. Now, this consists in three somewhat differently expressed articles. The first is the physical freedom. Now, physical freedom is freedom from injury, freedom from threat to life, health, then the movement of body. Second liberty is intellectual freedom. Now, that freedom is for expression of thought and belief. And third is the practical freedom. Civil liberty is practical freedom, and that is the freedom of the play of will and the exercise of choice in the general field of contractual action and relations with other persons. Now, of these, the first article is almost non-controversial. The freedom of movement, etc., should not be restricted, except in the interest of public safety, law, and order, which are themselves essential conditions of freedom. Then physical injury, etc., should not be inflicted upon anybody except as a punishment for a crime duly approved and in accordance with prescribed law and by the prescribed authority in this behalf. Whereas the second article concerning the freedom of thought and belief, now various reasons can be advanced in its defense that the advancement of knowledge, which flourishes the best in the atmosphere of free discussion. It is only possible when discussions are given a free rein. The advancement in knowledge is possible, and it's necessary that there should be freedom to criticize as well. Secondly, the peculiar evil of silencing the expression of an opinion is that it is robbing the human race and the posterity as well as existing generation of those who dissent from the opinion still more than those who hold it. Because if the opinion is right, then those who did not hear it, they were deprived of the opportunity of exchanging error for truth. And if wrong, they lose what is most as considered as generally a benefit, that is the clearer perception and livelier impression of truth produced by the collision of such error or erroneous opinion. Now, the third article of civil liberty mentioned by Barker, that is the freedom of contract, however, needs a closer examination because it is generally considered that people enjoy the freedom to enter into contract for their mutual advantage, and provided no damage is inflicted on third party. But the difficulty arises when this freedom is exploited by a stronger party in a bargain to impose very disadvantageous terms on the weak party. Now, Hobhouse, in his Element of Social Justice in 1922, therefore, insists on the equality of contracting parties in this matter. Now, freedom of contract is insufficiently defined when it is regarded as consisting solely in the absence of control. So, the freedom of control implies, or freedom of contract, I beg your pardon, implies that a substantial equality between the parties, as on the whole, leaves to each a real choice between concluding or rejecting the bargain. So, where no such equality exists, no party acts under a degree of compulsion. One party always acts in the degree of compulsion. So, absolute freedom of contract in an extreme case may be used to allow a man or even force him to sell himself to slavery and thereby deprive him of his freedom in perpetuity. Now, whereas a man enjoys civil liberty in capacity of an individual person, he enjoys political liberty in the capacity of a citizen. And to William Blackstone, He says political liberty meant the power of curbing government, curbing from which it follows that he conceives of a government as something external, which in modern democracy, where government is constituted by the people themselves, political liberty is liberty not of curbing government, but of constituting and controlling. Now, constituting it by a general act of choice or election, in which we all freely share on the basis of universal suffrage, controlling it by a journal and continuous process of discussion, in which we all freely share according to our capacities. Now, this view of political liberty postulates that positive right of the people to be represented in decision-making bodies and to influence their decision by freely articulating their views and opinion on issues of public policy. In effect, it is intended to ensure that state shall be sensitive and responsible to the prevailing social consciousness. In any case where provision of social liberty, I beg your pardon, in any case where provision of political liberty in this sense cannot be treated as adequate, where elections are fought and won with the help of money and manipulative power, and where the media of mass communication are held in ownership or under strong influence of privileged class, particularly by big business houses, where political liberty can hardly secure real or substantive freedom for the people. An economic liberty, broadly speaking, belongs to man in his capacity as a worker, whether with hand or brain, engaged in some gainful occupation or service. Now, in this sense, Barker suggests that economic liberty is implied in the article of civil liberty already enumerated. In fact, however, economic liberty is a bit ticklish issue. It's capable of conflicting interpretations by conflicting parties, employer and worker, trader and consumer, landlord and tenant, etc. One party would interpret it as the freedom to secure maximum profit. The other would insist on reasonable terms. Now, reasonable price and quality, reasonable rent, etc. Now, under such circumstances, if the stronger party is not curbed to safeguard the interest of the weaker party, the principle of liberty will be reduced to mockery. This is the sphere where adjustment between the claim of liberty and equality becomes most essential. Now, R.H. Tawney, in his Equality, written in 1938, writes and very significantly observes that when liberty is construed realistically as implying not merely a minimum of civil and political rights, but the securities that the economically weak will not be at the mercy of the economically strong, and that the control of those aspects of the economic life by which all are affected will be amenable in the last resort to the will of all, a large measure of equality, so far from being inimical to liberty, is essential to it. In short, it is in the economic sphere that the claims of negative liberty and positive liberty come in direct conflict and confrontation. So, unless social policy is geared to safeguard the interests of the vulnerable section in this sphere, the application of principle of liberty or freedom would be devoid of any content or substance. Then another dimension is of moral liberty. Moral liberty implies the right of an individual to act according to his conscience. It means the freedom of an individual to act as a rational being. It is given an opportunity to express and develop his personality. Now, it is possible in a democratic state and not in a totalitarian state. In totalitarian state, people are expected to act according to the orders of the government and not according to their inner conscience. So, it's not possible in such a totalitarian state. Then national liberty, international liberty are another dimensions where national liberty means the freedom of state or the nation. And it exists wherever the country or the community is freelance and sovereign. It suggests that a country that is totally free from foreign control, each nation encompasses a birthright to manage its national life because it likes that way. So if a country is underneath the dominance of others, no culture, social, economic or political development are attainable. And international liberty is an ideal of liberty which covers the universe as a whole. Therefore, within the international sphere, it implies the abandonment of war, axing of arms production, then abandonment of use of force, pacific settlement of global disputes. It conjointly needs adequate restraint on the strength of military group in order that it should not crush the freedom of the native folk or the people of a special country. Now, we talk about the safeguards which are needed to say the different dimensions of rights available to citizens against ever powerful state against which these rights are. As we studied in the scope of liberty, the tussle between liberty and the authority, and liberty as a license and liberty as obedience to the authority. So the safeguards first can be given in the point form, that is establishment of democracy. So liberty can survive solely in an exceedingly democratic nature of a government, in an exceedingly democratic government run by elected representatives of the folks, and government is responsible to the removable and unremovable to removable by the people. During this system, the political power resides within the hands of the people. Then there should be another safeguard of fundamental rights. It's another requirement of liberty, that there ought to be superior law of the country, namely the constitution. It's the sole constitution that encompasses the power of the state. So constitution of the democratic countries like US and India, there should be incorporated a bond of elementary rights to the individuals. Now, these rights defend the private liberties of voters from the state interference, therefore constitute and protect the freedom of citizens, and it's a defender of their liberties. Then independence of judiciary is another safeguard measure. The judges who decipher the constitution and therefore the judicial system are the custodian of the freedom of the folks. Therefore, liberty may be enjoyed if there is associate freelance judiciary. It's fully free from the impact of General Assembly or an executive. Solely an impartial and independent judiciary will protect the rights and liberties of the citizens. Then eternal vigilance, Lord Bryce has completely remarked, saying that eternal vigilance is the value of liberty. Now, citizens should be alert to their rights and duties, and that they should be forever able to protect them. They must always be alert and prepared to resist any slap-happy interference or encroachment on the liberty from the state. Then separation of power, another condition of freedom is distribution of power. Separation of power is an effective protection of individual freedom. In the interest of individual freedom, legislative, executive, judicial branches should have separate and distinct organs, each of which is independent of other. Then rule of law, another important necessity of liberty. It means equality before law, equal protection of law, and no one is higher than law. So law applies to everybody equally, and violation of law are going to be tortured equally. All violators are going to be punished equally. So it additionally implies that not a soul may be bereft of his life, liberty, and property except in accordance with law. So within the rule of law, the government work should be worn out in line with the course of the action prescribed by law. So the rule of law is a good instrument of individual liberty. Then decentralization of power. Decentralization of power assures an organized participation of individuals within the democratic method of nation, which reduces workload and enhances the potency of the government and averts the increase of dictatorship. Now, Lasky observes that the additional widespread assurance of power in the state, the more suburbanized its character, hue at each level of administration, there ought to be illustration of the people, which is important for protecting the freedom of people. Then absence of special privileges. Another requirement of liberty is that none in society ought to fancy any privilege supported by caste, sex, color, religion, language, or region, or any other ground. If during a state one's bound person are given special benefits, the rights of the soul cannot be protected. The existence of special privilege for a few souls or a few who have a spoil in the spirit of they spoil the spirit of liberty, and which creates chaos and confusion within the society. Thus, the absence of special privilege is an important protection of the freedom. And then we come to other safeguards like free and independent press. This is one more prerequisite of liberty. A free and freelance press makes sure liberty of persons. It makes on The market objective and unbiased news censures and government policies and allow the individuals from correct uh, attitudes towards numerous issues of the day. So this helps the people to settle on their representatives in elections. Then, last but not the least, that is the healthy party system, and this is essential during democratic setup because it gives option to the citizens in election. It conjointly it's a conjointly a crucial instrument for up the political awareness, to increase the political awareness among the people. It's the most effective safeguards of the people's liberty as it permits them to resist unjust and cruel laws. So we come to the end of what we have discussed, that is the concept of liberty, its nature, then its sphere of activity, and that is followed by its various dimensions, and then the safeguards which can ensure this liberty to individuals unhindered by the state interference at a level where the liberty of individuals are compromised. So with that, I come to the end of what I had to say on this, and rest of the lecture will continue in other PPTs and other presentations on liberty. Thank you for watching. Thank you very much.